to make sure that we walk away accomplishing. And one of those, perhaps the most important thing, is to thank you for your participation in the survey that we first published back on May 21st. We gave you about a month or so to fill that out. We had a total of 59 households at New Life that completed that, which is roughly 2/3 of our church. So anytime that you get that many people voting in anything at all, it's a pretty good accomplishment. So we really appreciate hearing from you. And tonight we're going to be talking about a lot of the comments that we heard from you in that survey. And so we'll look forward to addressing some of those here in a few minutes. First off, I want to restate the purpose of the project and of the survey. So when we moved into New Life Community Church, the building that we occupy now, back in 2004, for those of you who weren't with us, which is really many of the people in the room, at that time New Life was a church about 175 people. And I remember very specifically moving day. The church didn't really own much in terms of furniture yet. The church had been nomadic up until that point in time, and so anything that was being used by the church in terms of equipment was being unloaded and reloaded after every Sunday service in many of the buildings that the church was using before. And so there wasn't a whole lot to move into the property over on 29th Avenue. But, being in a church building is a lot like being in your own home. If you live there long enough, it fills up, doesn't it? You wonder where all that stuff came from. How come the closets are so full? So certainly our church building, just the square footage of it is well used and went from empty to full over the last 20 or so years. But we also have filled up with bodies. As I said, our membership count was approximately 175 people at the time. Today, New Life is a church of about 250 people. And we've been our current size for roughly 15 years. That's not necessarily the same people over that 15-year period of time. In fact, I'm curious how many people that are here tonight were not at New Life 15 years ago. You're new in the last 15 years. Yeah, so I would say half or so. And so we're certainly glad that many people have joined us over the last 15 years. If you do the math on that, 175 to about 250, that represents 40% growth in our church in a 15-year period of time, which is not record-setting growth, but it's healthy growth. And we praise God for all the families that He has brought to New Life over that period of time. It's significant when you think about what we were doing in the building 20 years ago when we moved in, and what we're doing now. It's a vastly different ministry. For example, we didn't have an Awana program when we moved into the building. We had fewer Sunday school classes when we moved into the building. And many of the other amenities that we enjoy now and take for granted, New Life Community Church had not had before. So we've had really great growth, both in terms of people and in terms of the need for our building. Interestingly, if you read much about church growth from so-called experts, they will consistently say that the hardest numerical barrier for a church to break is breaking 100 people, sort of moving from that church that feels like a living room church or a small group church to reaching that 100-plus size. The second hardest barrier to break is the 200 barrier. And we've been flirting with that number. We've been a little bit above it, but not really growing now for a few years. And there's probably different reasons for that. One reason could be that God's given us exactly who we need, and God is not ready to grow New Life Community Church yet. That certainly is possible. But another potential reason is that if you're a new family that comes to New Life Community Church and you look for a place to sit, sometimes it can be hard to find one. You look for a place to park, sometimes it could be hard to find a place to park. You walk around the halls or you come to some of the other activities that we have going on in our building, and it feels crowded. I don't know of any specific person that has ever walked in and said, "There's not enough space for me, I'm going somewhere else." So I'm not claiming that happens. But it is true that when people visit a church for the first time, They're looking at facilities, they're looking at leadership, they're looking at a lot of things that are going on in that church and what's represented there. And so it certainly is possible that to grow much larger numerically, we're simply going to need more space. And so one of the primary purposes of this building addition is to give us new space to accomplish a number of things. And we'll talk here in just a moment about what some of those things might be. As you'll recall, last year at this summer retreat was the first time that we talked about building something new, potentially building a gymnasium and undertaking a rather expensive building project. What we talked about initially was adding about 10,000 square feet to our current facility. And then you'll remember back in April, we shared with you a rendering of what that might look like, a rendering from our contractor. I'll show that drawing here a little bit later, but essentially it was a high school-sized gymnasium with 3 or 4 classrooms and 2 ADA-compliant bathrooms, perhaps a loft on the second floor where we envision a youth group hanging out. The initial price tag of that rendering, when it was all added up, was about $1.4 million, depending on the amenities that we wanted to include. And so we said last year and again this spring that what we were proposing was only an idea, and that we needed to hear from you to know whether or not, first of all, we could even afford to dream big and to think about things that we would want to do for the future. And then secondly, we'd have to make some decisions about what that something is. When it gets right down to it, what is the most bang for our buck? What can we build that will suit New Life Community Church in the best possible way? We have never tried to finance a project of this size before, and it just would have been foolish to go any further with our dreaming until we knew whether or not you were with us. And so we want to talk about how much you're with us, at least from a numerical point of view. So here was your response to the survey. You're going to see all the information at once up here. 59 households responded, and of those households, 39 said that you would be willing to give over the course of the first year of that project seed money of about $313,000. Then 34 families said, in addition, you would be willing to give in years 2 and 3 a total of amount of about $494,000. So when you add those two numbers together, that's a 3-year pledge total of almost $807,000. So, can we get a hoot and a holler for that? No. You don't understand. This is 2.5 times the amount of money that New Life has ever raised for anything. Can I hear a hoot and a holler? Yeah, it's an amazing number. When we were sending the survey out and the number, everything started trickling back in, I was literally checking those survey responses every day, and for the first 2 weeks, probably every 2 or 3 hours. Just excited about seeing how everybody would be responding. So the first thing that we need to recognize is that you all have been incredibly generous with what you have told us that you would be willing to pledge. And on behalf of the leadership team, I just want to thank you for that, because what you've communicated is that we have permission to continue talking about what we can build for the future of New Life Community Church. And that's very, very exciting. So I hope that we hang on to that as we talk about a few of the details tonight. We get into the weeds a little bit. Sometimes it's not as fun to live in the weeds. Boy, if we stay up here at the big picture, we think $807,000. Let's break ground. That's really exciting to talk about. We do need to share some of those in-the-weed details with you, though. So don't lose sight of a great pledge number that you guys have given to us. So again, thank you for that. Of those who did not pledge, for the majority, it was an issue of finances. A number of people rated their interest in the building project very high, and I'll share those numbers with you here in a minute. But fact of the matter is, some of our families just don't have anything more to give, and we certainly understand and respect that. I want to be honest that we had 4 households that did not pledge because they had questions or concerns about the project that we have not yet addressed sufficiently. And so I hope to address a few of those tonight, but to be honest with you, we'll continue to be addressing some of those here in the near future. But we understand and we respect that there's a few questions that we still need to answer for some people in our church to feel comfortable pledging a significant amount of their hard-earned dollars. And we're going to do our best to be faithful with providing that information for those families. Also, a few of you told us that you would be reevaluating as we went, and you told us that you were trying to be conservative with your pledge. So I think that the actual number that we could raise over the course of 3 years would be more than that $807,000 as our plans really come into full view. That will remain to be seen. So a lot of good information there. I hope what you're taking away is that we had a significant number of households that participated and said that they were willing to give. This is not a project that's based on, 1 or 2 or 3 people that are pledging all of that money. We've got pretty near 50% of our church that made a financial pledge to that. So we also asked you to rate your enthusiasm on a scale of 1 to 10. And here's the distribution of that enthusiasm. So we had 16 households that said we'd give that project an 8 out of 10. We had 14 households say that's a 10 out of 10. And then we had a number of households that rated that at a 7. So when you add those up, 16, 10, and 7, we've got, again, a majority of our households that responded to the survey that were very enthusiastic about the project. That wasn't necessarily the people that were giving the most money. It was simply people who said, this is a great idea. I'd like to support it as much as I can, whether that's $1,000 or a significantly larger amount of money than that. Also, something that was very encouraging as I looked at those numbers, a few of you acknowledged that your regular giving or missions might decline, but it was a very small number. And as we had mentioned to you from the outset, if we felt like a building campaign would diminish what we are able to do to support overseas missions or other ministries at New Life Community Church, we would not move forward with this project. Those commitments that we've made and the fruit of God's work in those other areas is very important, and we don't want to jeopardize that happening in the future. So again, very thankful that a very small percentage of people acknowledged that their giving may decline slightly towards some of those other campaigns. So that's also very good news. I want to spend some time talking about some of the feedback that we received, both some good feedback and some bad feedback. This is in the form of a few questions that people had. So the first was some were concerned about the financial cost of the project and whether we could even afford to do this. That's a fair question. And frankly, that was the primary reason for the survey that we sent out. Again, to even know whether or not this was something that we could proceed forward with, we had to know whether there would be financial support. And I think we've got the answer to that question. We'll talk more about the finances here in a little bit. But one thing that the leadership team does agree on is that we certainly want to be prudent with our budget and with our decision making. And as I said a moment ago, we don't want to sacrifice all the other things that we're doing for this one thing that we could do. So we do want to know that this is going to be an affordable project. And as we move forward, we're certainly going to be thinking about that. A number of you, not just Tony Schaefer, a number of you said that you'd like to see a kitchen included in the project. In fact, to be transparent, a few people said we'd be willing to give more money than we're pledging if we knew that a kitchen was going to be part of this project. So we hear you. We hear you. And we'll address the kitchen issue before we're done tonight. Yes, Mike. Give her a decent parking space? Yeah, well, we might be able to handle that. A few people questioned in the survey whether a gymnasium was a want or a need, and how a gymnasium might compare to other wants or needs like a kitchen or classrooms or Sunday morning seating in our sanctuary or overflow seating. And we really appreciate you sharing those kinds of concerns, legitimate questions about the difference between a want and a need, and asking us to take an overall look at our facilities, the facilities that we have now, as well as facilities that we might build, just to make sure that we're covering all the bases and that we are doing everything that we can to make sure that we have our needs covered before we start working on our wants. Now, unfortunately, to build everything that we might put on the want list, it's going to cost more than the $807,000 that y'all have pledged. So that's probably going to be difficult for us to do. But we certainly are going to make sure that we have some congregational input, and as our leadership team is talking about wants and needs and what we can put together, we want to make sure that we have all of our needs covered first. Next thing I want to address is Ben Hunt. You know, we had a question earlier today. How's the pastoral team doing in Ben's absence? And we talked about that this morning. Several people in the survey commented that it was a difficult project to evaluate in light of Ben Hunt's departure from New Life. Maybe it was a bad time to be asking such a large question, such an expensive question, and that's very understandable. If I was not part of the leadership team that maybe has been a little bit more on the inside of that than some of you, I would probably have the exact same concern. Is this the right time to be talking about this kind of project? But as pastors, we discussed that very thing. And we thought it would be appropriate to lay out this project even just a few weeks after Ben left, because we've been so unified in wanting to move forward with at least getting an answer to the question of whether or not this is something we could think about, something we could dream about. And we remain unified today that we think that this is an appropriate time and an appropriate way to move forward with the building addition. We're unified in that. So I would also say that from the survey responses, congregationally, big picture, it appears that your concerns are also relatively small. However, I do want to say that if you were one of those people that asked that question, or you didn't ask but you're still wondering, you're still curious, is this the right time to move forward in light of such a large change that's recently taken place at New Life, then we want to hear from you. We want to have a conversation with you. Your concerns, your feelings are important to us, and we don't want you to feel neglected or brushed aside in any way that we're proceeding forward with the idea, even at this particular time. So, you know, it's only Friday. We've got a couple of more days that we're all going to be up here together in Cedar Falls. If that's a conversation you'd like to have with one or more pastors, please pull us aside and give us an opportunity to have that conversation with you. So that's the answer to that question. There were a few comments related to our startup school, Paideia Christian Academy. And so I want to talk about that for a few minutes. We have gotten input from the board of directors of Paideia, which includes Carlin Stutzman, John Gross, and Ben Gross. And, initially we thought that the building addition would be a great benefit for PCA, and that New Life would build what it needs, and the school might tag along and get something out of it too. And that's still very much the case. We believe that there is probably a good win-win situation here for New Life Community Church and the school. And of course, there's the natural tie between the two. Paideia is not a school without New Life Community Church. And at least to start, I think about 2/3, maybe 70% of the students that are comprising PCA are from New Life Community Church. So there is a relationship there. But I do want to emphasize, please hear me clearly, that we are not considering the addition for the primary benefit of PCA. nor are we asking PCA to plan their curriculum and class sizes and growth around what New Life Community Church has to offer. These are separate projects that we believe can benefit from each other, but they are exclusive in terms of some of their aims and goals. The most important goal that we have at New Life Community Church for Building Edition is to serve the future needs of New Life Community Church, the space needs that we have. The most important goal, and I don't want to speak for the board of Paideia, but I expect that their most important goal is to provide the education and spiritual experience that they can for the students that enroll. And where that takes place, whether it's on the grounds at New Life or it's in a rented facility in the community for a period of time, the school has options for that. So, again, I know I've said this a couple of times already. We think that there's a win-win situation there for both parties to benefit, both PCA and New Life Community Church, but we're not planning either of those projects or either of those plans around the other, okay? One thing that you probably know is that PCA is not going to be able to start in our current building. The original part of the building does not have a sprinkler system in it that is required for schools. Brad Fisher has helped us price out the cost of retrofitting our current facility with a sprinkler system. That's probably $200,000 to $250,000. So it's an expensive project. It's a messy project. It would take some time to complete, and it certainly wouldn't be available, even if we started now, that wouldn't be available at the beginning of the fall semester. So PCA is starting at another location in Cedar Rapids. We do really appreciate, though, that Brad has invested a lot of time in running down some opportunities for grant money that could allow us to fund a significant portion of a sprinkler system using somebody else's money. Isn't that great? So we're hopeful that within the next couple of months, we might find out whether as much as $200,000 of that price tag could be funded by, is that the federal government, Brad? It's the federal government. Ironic. I love that. So we should know that by August, September timeframe, perhaps, we'll see. But if that comes through, if that grant comes through, and 80% of a sprinkler system is paid for by our government, I don't want to promise that we're going to install a sprinkler system, but that would sure give us a great head start, and we'd seriously be thinking about spending the other $40,000 or whatever that would cost to finish up that project. So, again, PCA cannot use the New Life Community Church building unless we do have a sprinkler system in the old part of the building as well as anything that we build in the future. Also, as PCA grows, obviously it will require more space. It's likely that PCA could outgrow our current church building regardless of how many rooms we try to add on. Again, we just don't know. Other schools that have started up like PCA have grown significantly in their first several years. And more state governments, including the state of Iowa across the country, have allowed voucher programs where tax dollars that are assigned per head per student can be used in any way that a family wishes to do so. So if that continues to be the case here in the state of Iowa through our government and our state legislature, then certainly funds would be available for families to make these kinds of decisions to send their kids to a private school. And we believe that PCA will greatly benefit from that. So as it grows, the time that they are able to stay at New Life Community Church, if they in fact do move back to our campus, may be limited. We just have to see. That's a big question mark at this point in time. Finally, I do want to talk about our current building. Several people noted in the survey that perhaps there are a few things that we already should have done before instead of building something new, like installing that sprinkler system, perhaps looking at our bathrooms, remodeling the kitchen, those kinds of things. And certainly the largest of those projects would be adding additional seating to our sanctuary. Beyond anything that we would do that's really significant to our building is expensive and probably expands our footprint. So we end up building a larger footprint to the building as soon as we start thinking about seating or bathrooms, because ADA compliant bathrooms probably need to be about twice the size of our current bathrooms. So where does that space come from? If you think about where our bathrooms are located in our building, it doesn't come from the square footage that's already there, right? So we have some fun and challenging decisions to make in the future about what we do with our current facility and what we do with anything that we would build down the road. Finally, there's one other factor that has come into play here in the last several months. If you live in Cedar Rapids specifically, you might know that your kids are being redistricted. If you have kids in the public school system, Cedar Rapids School District announced several months ago that it is closing 5 elementary schools, 5 elementary and middle schools. And that will start after the 26-27 school year. So there will be one more school year, and then 5 of those schools will close. If any of you have ever enrolled your kids in the Cedar Rapids homeschool program that was home-based at Wright Elementary School, and you've been to Wright, that's one of those buildings that will be closing. The one that's closest to New Life Community Church is Nixon Elementary School, which is in Hiawatha. The Andersons probably would love maybe relocating to that school. It's about a 2-minute drive from their house. Nixon Elementary was built in the early 1970s. It was named after President Nixon when he was still in office before he was impeached. I wonder if they ever thought about changing the name after 1974. But it stayed Nixon Elementary. So it's a relatively modern school building. Certainly would have a gymnasium in it already, as well as a lot of the other amenities that PCA would benefit from and New Life Community Church would benefit from. Unfortunately, I don't know if any of us have been in that building, and it's not going to be for sale for some time. We have no idea what it would cost yet, but we feel like it would be prudent to make a few telephone calls to see what that building's valued at, to know if it would be an option, a prudent option for us to take a look at. It's just something that we haven't had an opportunity to do yet. The news is relatively recent. And again, that school isn't literally closing for an entire another school year. So we do want to do some research there and see if that's something that we should look into. And I'm sure there's more questions and comments that we could talk about tonight. And we'll take some time at the end here. We'll have a few minutes for some Q&A, and you're certainly welcome to answer ask some additional questions if you have them. So big picture here, where does that leave us? Well, you helped us answer some pretty important questions. First of all, you helped us answer the question, can we afford to do something? The answer is overwhelmingly yes. Again, your response of pledging about $807,000 indicates that we need to move forward. You've given us a mandate, if I could use that word, to move forward with something. And the fact that those pledges came from half of the households in our entire church and about 2/3 of the people that responded to the survey, again, shows that there's very broad support for moving forward. So we're very grateful for that. Secondly, you helped us answer the question, should we do something? Again, the answer is yes, we need to do something. If we're going to be proactive about planning for future growth at New Life Community Church, then the answer is yes, we need to move forward with a project. So we have the pledge of money, we have strong support, but this is a big project and we need to get it right. I am not much of a builder, but like some of you, I'm familiar with that old phrase that you measure twice and you cut once. I'm usually a measure once and cut about 4 times kind of guy, but we can't do that for this project. We need to build it right the first time because we really don't have a second opportunity to spend, $800 to $1.2, $1.3 million. So we want to be sure about what we're doing. For the leadership team of New Life to feel confident about that, we just need some more time to plan. We need more time to think about the relationship between Paideia and New Life in terms of facilities, and also, by the way, in terms of growth. If PCA expands from 30 kids to 60 and 60 to 100 and 100 to some larger number, most of those future children at New Life, at Paideia will not necessarily be New Life kids. And we would expect that non-New Life kids will bring non-New Life families to New Life Community Church. That would be a natural growth potential for our church. And if that's the case, then again, we'll need facilities that will be able to accommodate not just PCA, but the families that will unite with us at New Life because they were first introduced to us through the school. And we certainly will appreciate and value that when that happens. So we need to just think more about that relationship. We also need to think about what would happen in the next 10 years if New Life grew another 40%. If we grow another 40% as a church over the next decade or so, we'll be a church of more than 300 people. Imagine 300 people using our facility on Sunday morning the way it is now. It's possible, but it would be even more uncomfortable than it is today. And that's a great problem to have. But we want to plan for it. We want to be proactive about accommodating it. As I mentioned, we need to have an answer to that sprinkler system. We want to know what we're dealing with there. We want to have an answer to whether Nixon Elementary School or another closed facility in the Cedar Rapids School District is an option. And we want to respond to some of the concerns in the survey about more thoroughly evaluating our wants and our needs and the best way to tackle a very expensive project. So this leaves us with more work to do among ourselves and with our builder to make sure that the project that we're moving forward with is the right project. But I hope that you're hearing my language. My expectation is that we are moving forward with a project. We just don't know exactly what that looks like yet. But I do want to show you some options. Let's talk about what that could look like. The next couple of slides are going to be some renderings that are extremely crude, okay? So don't get in your mind that, oh, we saw this picture on a screen, that's what we're going to build, okay? That would be a mistake. But the first of these is the rendering that we showed you in the spring. So this is the original drawing from our contractor. I know it's very small, it's impossible for you to read, but what you're looking at here is the big area being a gymnasium. The measurements of that are equal to the measurements of a full-size high school gymnasium. So you walk into Lindmar or Marion High School, you look at their high school gym, that's the dimensions of the floor. You see on the left side of that drawing 3 square boxes. Those are intended to represent 3 classrooms or finished spaces. They could be offices. In that drawing, there are a couple of bathrooms, a men's and women's bathroom. There are some stairs that lead up to a second floor. Again, what we thought at the time is that might represent a space for a loft that would overlook a portion of that gym floor. So when we asked you, would you be willing to pledge some money towards a project, this is the picture that we showed you of what you might be pledging money for. We want to show you a couple of other ideas. So if you could bring up the next slide here. What you're going to see here, again, these are not architectural drawings. This is Brian Hagerman using a Word doc to put boxes together, okay? But what you see on the right side of that drawing is a smaller multi-purpose room. I'm not going to call this a gymnasium per se, but if any of you have been in an elementary school gym, or you've been to Isaac Newton and you've been to the gym over at the old Isaac Newton School for basketball or volleyball, that open space on the right side of that drawing is about the size of that gymnasium, okay? So it's not a full-size high school gym, but when we talk about needs and wants, it is a space that would very well accommodate the Awana Play Square in the size that it's intended to be. It's a space that would accommodate youth group. It's a space that would accommodate big New Life Community Church events like weddings and pot graces and fall festivals and Candy Fest and all the things that we do that sometimes attract other people from the community or larger groups of our families in. But you also see there are a lot of boxes. So this is the same 120 by 80 foot footprint, about 9,600 square feet. But you'll see along the outer ring of that drawing a number of boxes that represent classrooms or office space. You see right smack in the middle of that drawing 4 rooms that would accommodate, again, classrooms or office spaces. And you see at the bottom there a kitchen. In fact, all of these drawings have kitchens in them. Okay, let's go on to the next one. The next 2 drawings that you're going to see are a smaller footprint. They're a 100 by 80 square foot footprint. So it's lopping off about 1,600 square feet. I would guess that that's probably going to reduce the cost of the project by somewhere maybe around $150,000 to $200,000. We need to find that out from a builder specifically. Not that we're necessarily trying to cut cost at this point, but if we have a building that costs $1 million and you've pledged $800,000, that means we have very little debt. And the less debt that we have to carry forward and the faster we can pay that off, the better that is. Okay? So it's a little bit smaller building, but again, you see a large area on the right side that is a great space for many purposes. You see on the left side, again, about 4 different classrooms or office spaces with a kitchen with a couple of bathrooms. The third drawing is a lot like that. It just flips everything the other direction. So again, the large space there is the same size gymnasium. It's the same size gym in all 3 of those pictures, or again, multi-purpose area. Also a kitchen. The bottom row there has 4 classrooms. So all of these drawings, whether it's the full 120 by 80 or it's a smaller 100 by 80, are going to have between 4 and maybe 8 classrooms in them. They're going to have a kitchen, and we're going to have a large space for recreational activity. Again, there's no promise here that this is exactly what we're going to build. What we just want you to see is, as we think about this project going forward, what we want to go forward with is the idea of flexibility. We really want to see what we have in our building, what we could benefit from the most in the addition, and use the money that you're pledging in the best possible way that we can. Because as I said before, we don't get a second chance with this. We don't have another $1 million sitting around. At least, I don't think we do we? Maybe we do. Well, maybe we'll ask the question. All right. So, wants and needs within a reasonable budget. So let me conclude here before we have a little bit of Q&A with some next steps. The New Life leadership team, so Ben, Kurt, myself, and Matt Huther are going to be coming back up to Cedar Falls in mid-August. We're going to spend 2 days up here. The primary thing that we're going to be talking about is a 10-year growth plan for New Life. What do we think New Life Community Church might look like by 2036? And what do our facilities need to look like to accommodate the church of a decade from now? So that's going to be our conversation, our primary conversation. And we hope that by the time we get back from Cedar Falls, mid to late August, we'll have some great ideas about how we can move forward with this building project relative to what we see as New Life Community Church's future. Secondly, and this is very important, so I want to ask you to capture this information and use it. If you made a pledge and now you're having second thoughts that we might not build exactly what we showed you before, or you're ecstatic about the fact that maybe there's going to be a room that starts with the letter K in the new addition, I'd like to hear from you. I recognize what we're talking about is a little bit of a shift in priorities or a shift in vision for what the addition might look like. And so if that is overwhelmingly exciting to you or that's overwhelmingly depressing to you, either way, if it changes what you feel like you would be inclined to give towards this project, boy, we'd sure like to hear from you and know that before we take too many more steps forward. So if you'd be kind enough to provide us with that feedback, if that describes you, what you've heard tonight changes something about how you're thinking about this project, then we'd like to know that. The last thing I want to mention is I think I've been pretty clear here that we're not getting back to Marion on Monday and breaking ground, right? We're not ready to bring the bulldozer in quite yet to start leveling some dirt off. And so if you have any measure of disappointment, like, oh man, it doesn't sound like this is going to happen in July or August or maybe even September, then I would ask you to not be disappointed. This is not a no, it's just a not quite yet. It's a delay so that we can be smart. And I'm hopeful. This is just Brian Hagerman, okay? I'm not up here representing our entire leadership team, but I am personally hopeful that we would be ready to break ground in the spring. So as soon as that ground thaws, I don't know if that's March, I don't know if that's April, but that we would have all of our plans in place and that you would allow us to have all of our seed money financing in place, that by next spring we are ready to roll with this project. That would be awesome. So we'll see if that happens. So that is the update. And as I mentioned, we've got a little bit of time. This teaching or slot goes through 7:30. So we got about 15 minutes if you have any questions that we can answer for you. Yes? Yeah. Yeah, we are recording this, so just for the benefit of those that are going to pick this up later, the question was, can we send out some renderings? Can we send out some additional information that reflects the possibility of some of these changes that we're talking about tonight? Absolutely. In fact, we can send out this entire PowerPoint presentation. Oh, with a survey. Can we send that out with a survey? Yeah, we can certainly consider that. I'll be honest that I'm not sure that everybody will feel inclined to fill out a whole new survey, but yeah, a little one. Yeah, we do want the feedback, so we'll see what we can do about that. Thank you for the question. What else? Yes, yeah, Leah? Yeah, so the first question was, would we, if we were to look at one of the Cedar Rapids School District buildings that is going to be on the market, what would we do with that? Would New Life Community Church move to that kind of facility, or would we have it in addition to the building that we already have? I'll just provide my opinion that that would not be a building that New Life Community Church could move into. Those school district facilities are not churches. They have some amenities that we don't have at New Life, but we've got some amenities in our building that a school wouldn't have. So that would be an additional piece of property. What I could see happening if we use something like that is that the location of Youth Group in Awana might move to that facility. Certainly if PCA is in a position that they would like to partner with New Life and use that kind of facility, that'd be a natural fit for PCA. But I personally don't see us selling our current church building to buy an elementary school. Yeah, I think the smallest ones were 16 by 18. A lot of them were 20 by 20. Yep. I'm sorry. The question was on the renderings, it appeared that on the renderings, it appeared that some of the classroom spaces or office spaces might be a little bit small, 16 by 18. Others on the renderings were 20 by 20. Again, I just want to highlight that those are really crude Microsoft Word drawings, and when we work with a builder and we work with an architect and we specify what each and every room would be used for, I'm sure we'll get rooms that are the right size to accommodate all the things we need. You might have noticed the kitchen was 20 by 30, and that's a pretty big kitchen. So I don't know that we need a kitchen that's 20 by 30. But, you know, the box fit really nicely. So, Peter. Yeah, so Peter's ill-informed comment is, no, I'm joking, Peter. Peter's question is, hey, we've got a kitchen. What would be the purpose of a new kitchen? I'm probably not the person to answer this question perfectly, but one thing I can tell you is that the way that our kitchen is currently set up, it doesn't have a true ventilation system. And so as a result of that, we really can't do any cooking in our current kitchen. That's one of the reasons why we have, for some of our men's ministry activities, we have a grill outside. We can't make bacon, sausage. You can't really make anything on the stovetop because the venting isn't sufficient to do that. Secondly, if PCA were to be a partner with New Life and is using the facility, and we've got 30 to 60 to 100 kids that are bringing sack lunches, they're certainly not going to fit in the 2 refrigerators that are in our current kitchen. So those would be 2 reasons, but I bet tonight if you were to take Tony and a couple other gals that spend a lot of time in the kitchen and just head to the corner, Peter, and talk with them for about 15 minutes, you'll have a longer list than you could document. It's an old kitchen. I'm guessing it dates back to the early 1980s when that part of the building was built by Antioch, and that's 40 years. Most of us probably don't have kitchens that have been untouched in our homes for 40 years, but I think our church building probably has that kind of kitchen. Talia? What changed? Yeah. Well, in the original drawing that we shared, the question was, what has changed between before and now that we could consider a kitchen, because we talked about that being another, couple $100,000 expense. What's changed is that if we reduce the size of the portion of the building that would be allocated to a gym or to a multi-purpose area, it allows us to keep that 120 by 80 footprint rather than having a 140 by 80 footprint. That adds 1,600 square feet or some amount of additional space, making the rectangle longer. When we do that, it just adds more expense. The other factor is that there is a difference between a full-fledged industrial kitchen and a more not recreational kitchen, residential kitchen. So what kind of code we would need to follow to build out the kitchen the way that we want it, obviously to be determined, because we haven't consulted with experts about that yet. But tell you the short answer is if we reduce the size of the multi-purpose area and keep the footprint the way it is, it reduces the amount of additional cost. Yep. Yes? Okay, so 2 questions. The first is, what is the current mortgage on the church property? And maybe I could just add to that, what would we do with that mortgage? And then secondly, could we build the exterior walls of the new facility, have some spaces that are left unfinished, or spaces that we might eventually finish with our own labor? So the answer to the first question is, and Pete Gross, please correct me if my numbers are a little off, I believe our current mortgage is roughly $150,000 outstanding. The amount of money that we pay into that on a monthly basis now obviously is much more principal than interest because of the length that we are into that loan. Hills Bank, who we have our current banking relationship with, has told us that if we want to finance the new addition and wrap the old mortgage into that, that is something that they would be willing to look at with us. Whether or not we would do that really just depends on the most prudent way to spend our dollars. So we could take a portion of the pledge money and we could just pay off the old loan outright. We could wrap the remaining balance into a new loan. We're going to do the thing that is the smartest way to spend the dollars. With interest rates, whatever they would be when we're ready to take out those new loans. The second part of the question is, again, can we complete some exterior space, have some unfinished interior space? Sure, of course we can. How much of that labor we want to provide ourselves is probably up in the air. We have some very skilled men and women in our church that can help with parts of that. We also have some building codes and responsibilities to probably get some professional help with other parts of that addition. And so, again, we'll do what we think is the smartest thing to do in terms of using our dollars and getting the product that we want to have in the end. But, could some of that remain unfinished for a period of time with the hope of doing that 3, 4, 5 years down the road? Of course, that's something we could consider doing. Once we put the structure up, it's hard to add to it. So, the exterior of it's probably set for a long time. Yeah, Ethan? And then Kyla. Yeah, I think your question, Ethan, was what do we do about our sanctuary? Are we thinking about what to do with the sanctuary in terms of seating capacity? Yeah. Yeah, we thought about that. Again, my answer is probably an imperfect answer. I think our leadership team is going to be spending more time thinking about that when we're together up here in August. But about 15 years ago, we had a gentleman that came in who's very well respected in our community, was the president of a large commercial and residential building company. And we just had him come in and estimate what would be the cost to make our sanctuary bigger, add 100 to 150 seats, whether we expand it out this way, whether we expand the depth of it, or whether we put a balcony in. And the price tag was gigantic. The price tag was larger than what we're talking about for this. And that's just to add 100 to 150 seats. So if we did that, if we added to our sanctuary seating, the truth is we couldn't afford to do anything else at all. So there's some trade-offs there. My personal opinion is what we would be more likely doing is taking a new addition and using that as an overflow space, or using our current fellowship hall and doing some reformatting there so that it is more conducive to a Sunday morning service. Right now, we don't need that expanded seating capacity. The truth is that we have lost a few families in the last couple of months, so our seating needs aren't quite as high as they were a few months ago. But as we grow, as we continue to grow in the future, we're going to need some additional seating somewhere. So it's a fair question, Ethan. Something we need to talk more about. But it's expensive. It's really expensive. And I should add, one of the big reservations that we have about messing around with our current building is that when you start updating a building, you got to go all the way with the updates. We would anticipate the city of Marion will come in and tell us all the other things that we need to change about the entire property to put more seats associated with our sanctuary, like expanding our parking lot and putting a sidewalk up 29th Avenue and moronic things that have nothing to do with expanding seating capacity. But that's code. So it's a little frightening what the city might ask us to do. Kyla? Question is, are we thinking about any external fundraising? No, we haven't considered any. I don't know who else besides New Life members would give to expand our building. One thing that is possible, going back to Paideia, it's possible that if Paideia were to use our facility, they'd be in a position to pay some rent. And so we could possibly collect some rent money from the school to pay for that portion of our facilities that they would be using. But again, that relationship between Paideia and New Life is not yet crystal clear in terms of what their classroom needs are going to be and what we could provide. So that's a wait and see. Yes, Sherry? Yeah, so if we add on to our facility, will we need more parking? I don't think adding on to the facility itself will require more parking. But if we look at projection of growth, if we become a church of 300 plus, will we need more parking? Yeah, I would think that we would. And we've got a couple of empty areas that we could expand our parking into. I know that the area that is to the north of our church building, the relatively flat field, that would be an unpopular place for us to put a new parking lot, but that's a place where we could put parking. Of course, we've got the back acre of our property that is relatively unused except during Summerfest and maybe some very special events, so that's an area that we could look at as well. Again, this is part of the broader conversation that we need to have as a leadership team. We have 5.5 acres of land, not just land. I believe our total acreage of our property is 5.5 acres. And we've also had some other ideas over the years. Can we build a walking trail? Can we build a gazebo? Can we do something? Can we beautify it so we can have outdoor weddings? Yeah, we can do all of those things, but it all requires some money. It all requires some land. It all requires some forward thinking, because once you do one, you can't necessarily go and do the other. So we want to think about all those things. Yeah, Ray? Yeah, so the question is, in terms of overflow seating, what could be accommodated with a new building addition if we have more of a full-size gym versus a smaller rec space? We have seating capacity in our sanctuary currently of about 280 chairs. Our average Sunday attendance, I think, is around the 210 to 220 number. So there are empty seats. They're just hard to find when we're all standing up and singing, and you come in about 5 minutes late, you can't see where all those empty chairs are. Is there question, comment? All right, thanks, Tony. Yep. Our current fellowship hall, I've actually gone back there and tried to envision how many people could comfortably sit there if we did a little bit of rearranging. And I think that's about 100 people. We don't currently have that many chairs set up in the fellowship hall, but with a little bit of reconfiguring, I think we could put 100 people back there. That would give us total seating capacity of 380 people. I think that would probably be sufficient for a period of time. If we wanted to use a new building addition, the smallest of those drawings, and I don't have those dimensions in front of me, I think it was about 50 by 80, the smaller size. Yeah, that didn't help. I can't even read my own numbers up there. Maybe you can read them better than I can. So our current fellowship hall from wall to wall is, I believe, 42 feet. So when we talk about a space that's 50 feet wide, that's wider than our current area. And if this were 80 feet long, that's longer than the portion of our fellowship hall. If you go to the mailboxes and you go back to where the screen and the slide projector are currently set up, all of that space is less than 80 feet. So any of these drawings is bigger than the capacity of our current fellowship hall. And a high school gymnasium, those renderings add another about 300 square feet to these drawings. So whatever, we could put more and more and more chairs in. So the bottom line to the question is, any of these renderings of an elementary size multi-purpose space, if we chose to use that for Sunday morning seating capacity, I think it would accommodate us for a fairly long period of time. And if we get to be a church of 380 or 400 people and we need more space than that, praise God, and we'll have to think about some other things. Would a full-size gym have the same seating capacity as our auditorium? I don't know the answer to that question, Ray. I haven't measured it that way. And of course, it's a different kind of measurement. This is a rectangular box, and our sanctuary is sort of a pie shape, and we haven't done that level of detailed thinking. Yep. Yeah, so Ray's pointing out that Northbrook, formerly Northbrook Baptist Church, I don't know if that's the church that still meets there. John and Jessica Gross got married there, if you remember going to their wedding. Yeah, they have a full-size gymnasium that I think they use for services. I think they also have a sanctuary in that building, so I don't know what they use for what. But again, these are good questions, and this is why we're not bringing a bulldozer onto the property next week. We don't have answers to these really important questions yet about long-term usage of our property. Yeah, Jaden? Yeah, Wade. He'd like the bigger gym. Yeah, not a democracy. The question was, who's ultimately going to decide what this new facility looks like? No, I don't envision that we'll take a church vote necessarily. Like, here's 4 drawings. If 23 of you like this one and 16 of you like that one, we're going with this one over here. Now, I think instead what we're going to do as a leadership team is talk through what we need, what we believe that we need, and then present that back to the church and ask you to support that the same way that you've supported the current project, and make sure that we still have the dollars available to do it with an updated idea. That's what I envision happening. That's my personal opinion. I'm not necessarily speaking for Kurt and Ben. They don't have a microphone right now. But that's what I think that we would do. Except for Tony's Kitchen. Brad? Yeah, so the question is, have we explored other commercial properties that are available in Cedar Rapids or industrial properties? Like, there's a lot of empty buildings around Cedar Rapids, Marion. No, we've not talked to a real estate agent. We haven't talked about how we could retrofit other spaces in town. Maybe that's a conversation that we could and should have, but we really haven't had those kinds of conversations, Brad. Yeah. Yeah, so the question, again, back to overflow seating in our fellowship hall, are we thinking about altering the footprint of the fellowship hall, interior, relative to the footprint of the sanctuary? Could we push one into the other, etc.? Again, all those things are possible. I would say this, and any of you that have ever built your own home know this to be true. When you start from scratch, you can build it any old way you want to. You can wire it the way you want to. You can put the toilet exactly where you want it, right? There are some tremendous benefits to starting from scratch with the blueprint that you work with your builder to put together. And you don't have to worry about old codes and where load-bearing walls were before and where they're going to be in the future. So yeah, we can have a discussion about our current facility and moving this and moving that beyond the scope of what we really had discussions about currently. Any other questions for tonight? Okay. Again, the 2 most important things I want you to walk away with. Number 1 is our thanks for pledging $807,000. That is a remarkable number. Again, it's not an exaggeration to say that is 2.5 times larger than any number that New Life Community Church has ever pledged for anything in its existence. That is significant. I hope that you're excited about that. The second takeaway is that our current plan is that we will do something. We just want to make sure that we do the right thing to use your money in the most effective way possible for the future of New Life Community Church. And the last thing is the Q&A isn't over. So please, if you have additional questions, if you have alterations that you want to make to your pledge, you want to increase it, you want to decrease it, whatever the case is, please let us know that because it'll be important as we continue planning for the future. All right? And we'll work on getting this information out to everybody and some mechanism of capturing some additional feedback that you guys have. I appreciate you hanging on for the Q&A. So that'll wrap us up for tonight. I think the next activity here is name that tune, right? Okay. Where do you need people for that? Right down here. So if you're going to play Name That Tune, come on down and gather up your team and let's get going. Thank you, everybody.